The Race and Postcast in association with Paddy Power. They prize up all UK and Irish racing the night before.
Hello and welcome to the Weekend Review Postcast. My name is Tom Kerr and I'm joined in the studio today by Nick Watts and on the line by Tom Segal Pricewise and Brendan Duke from Paddy Power. Hello everyone, how are you doing?
Hi Tom. Hello Tom.
It's good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. Listen, we just before we get on to all the weekend action, just a quick shout out here for my new hero, Paul Keeley, who napped up Russian Realm at 25 to 1. I don't think there was much of that about 16 to 1. Paul can't be with us today. Obviously, he's in hour 56 of his celebrations. But we do have Brendan. Brendan, I mean, you can't catch a break, can you? It's first Cheltenham and now this.
He's just taken an absolute wrecking ball to bookmakers the last 3 weeks, and it's Johnny Ward I feel sorry for. Well, not that sorry, given that he backed Russian Realm. Excuse me, but he's put up a horse that was 10 to 1 when he put it up in a 25 runner handicap. Barely gets a mention, the young fella.
Absolutely. Well, that is Paul Keeley. He puts a lot of people in the shade, doesn't he? He does hog the glory. You've got to say,
Well, yeah, well, in a quiet way. It's got to end sometime. When's the funeral? That is the cry from bookmakers, because it's been a 3-week wedding. It's all a bit much at this stage.
Yeah, you tried to put me off for that reason, Brendan. I just ploughed straight in.
I did. He's just defying variance on a weekly basis, the boy Keeley. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, well, we can't sort of luxuriate in our glory for too long, because humiliatingly we did all manage to get the 2,000 guineas completely wrong. We all said Air Force Blue was a good thing. Turned out slightly different. Air Force Blue ran no sort of a race whatsoever. Came home in 12th after being sent off 4-5 favourite. Inexplicable. The only thing we've got going for it, O'Brien has said maybe I trained him too hard. Nick, what was your thoughts on the favourite? Is it a blip? Has he not trained on?
I think it's probably a blip. I can't believe he's going to be this season's JFK, surely, after his performances last season. What the truth of it is, I'm not really sure. O'Brien, like you said, reckons he overtrained him, trained him a bit too hard for the race. Still doesn't quite explain it for me. He was going nowhere at halfway, was he? And then he just went backwards. And, I really hope he does come back to his best. Where he goes from here, I have absolutely no idea at all. O'Brien today was talking about going to the Irish 2000. So in effect, drawing a line through this and just starting again from scratch in the Irish race, and that could see him go back on the right track. If not that, then I imagine he might try sprinting. But desperately disappointing. It just showed nothing. And if you backed him, if you were on in the winter, last summer at big prices, then you could never really hold out much hope from quite a long way out in the race.
No, I mean Ryan didn't persevere with him at all. Obviously, he really sort of eased up. But it's just a different horse. It was a different horse to the one we saw absolutely blitzing home in the Dewhurst last year. Tom, what were your thoughts on the favourite?
The clues were there, and I thought, how many times have you seen a top-class horse with Aidan OBrien with a tongue tie and a cross-nose band for his seasonal reappearance? You just haven't. He's clearly got a wind issue, isn't he? And that's the only thing I can think. He's clearly been making a noise at home. They put all the things on him, and it's not worked on the track. I would not go near him for ages.
Right, well, there we go. Strong words from Tom. Listen, we'll move on to the winner, though. We've got to give him his dues. This is all going to come into the Derby. So, Brendan, perhaps you could just give us a quick rundown of the latest odds for the Derby.
Yes, just one moment. What have I done here?
Got to take a call.
Intriguingly, at the top of the betting, we have Minding with the run proviso 5 to 2, 9 to 2 US Army Rangers, 6 to 1 Midterm, 12 to 1 the Galileo Gold, 16 to 1 Massat Foundation, Wajiz, Harzand, the Gurkha, and 20s Bar.
Righto. Thanks very much for that, Brendan. Tom, I know you cannot speak too much about the Derby because you're doing Antipose Pricewise for the Racing Post tomorrow. Subtle plug there, listeners. But just give us quickly your thoughts on Galileo Gold. Was it an impressive Guineas winner for you?
Very impressive, yeah. I mean, I personally thought it was a well below par renewal of the race, but Galileo Gold was drawn on the outside, wasn't he? He had no cover from the word go. Frankie had to use him up, and he was still very strong at the finish. I think he'll run in the Derby. I can't, the Al Shakab boys will want to run him in that. Can't see any reason why not to run him in it. Pedigree-wise, it looks debatable. He's by Paco Boy, but there's a lot of stamina on his dam side, so it is a chance he could stay. And if he runs, he'll never be 12-1.
Yeah, he's got to go for the Derby, doesn't he? Hugo Palmer's an up-and-coming, ambitious trainer. He's just won his second classic, his first British classic. Nick, can you see any circumstance when this horse doesn't go for the Derby?
No, I think he'll go for it. I think the probable likelihood is he'll run a nice race in the Derby, probably a non-staying race. I can't believe that the horse side by Paco Boy, who struggled to get him. He only just got a mile, I think, no further than that. Probably better at 7 furlongs even. Couldn't get a horse to stay a mile and a half. There is stamina on the dam side, but I just think there is a query in the last couple of furlongs. Wouldn't be surprised to see him run a nice race, but then drop back to miling later in the season.
Sure. And we heard there that perhaps there's a question over, whether this was a vintage Guineas. What's your view on the strength of the form?
Yeah, I was a bit nonplussed watching the race, to be honest. And, Air Force Blue obviously didn't run his race. And, Galileo Gold wasn't massively on my radar, going into the race, although, Hugo Palmer is showing himself to be an absolute fantastic trainer in a very short space of time. So he's doing great things there, isn't he? But, slightly underwhelmed by it, maybe, although not to take anything away from the winner.
Sure thing. Brendan, anything that's used of the beaten horses, anything that stood out for you that you're going to be keeping an eye on as the season goes on?
I thought the Zonderland ran pretty well, actually. He didn't have the greatest trip in the world, and I'm not sure he was in love with the dip either. But return to a more conventional track, I could see him having a big day in him later in the year.
And Tom, how about yourself? Looking back in the field, anything sort of grab your eye?
No, nothing at all. I mean, the 3 horses I fancied finished last, second last and third last. Stormy Antarctic, Air Force Blue and Marcel. Yeah. The rest of them, let's be honest, they're not a great bunch. The Brian Smart's horse in the first time Blinkers wasn't beaten far. Ribchester's a good horse, but he's not brilliant. Airvice Marshall, I suppose, is quite interesting. He's been off since running at Newmarket in July, didn't he? He ran in the July Stakes, I think, one of those races, and then came back. He might come on for the run and win a good race one day, but let's be honest. I mean, I know Owen Burrows is plotting Massart's route to the Derby, but if Galileo Gold doesn't stay, he certainly won't stay. He's by an acclamation mare. I just can't have him staying any step further than a mile and a quarter. I think Galileo Gold will beat him whatever trip it's over. So, to be honest, looking at positives to come out of the race, bar the winner, I can't find any.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Well, we'll move on now to the 1,000 guineas, and I don't think there's going to be much dispute here between the panel. Minding was immense, wasn't she, Nick?
Yeah, she was brilliant. I mean, the clues were there from her start of last season when she was brilliant in the Fillies Mile, beat Nathra 4.5 lengths, and she's come back. And I suppose there was a slight question mark looking back through O'Brien's 1,000 guineas winners, in terms of it was a comeback and that kind of thing. But she just destroyed the field. I think she'll get an Oaks trip, no problem at all. I'm sure that's where she'll go next. I'm not sure about the Derby. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned. I think fillies should run in fillies races. But wherever they want to go with her, she's going to take an awful lot of beating. She was head and shoulders above these.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I don't see Minding going for the Derby, although obviously it would be interesting to see her lock horn, so to speak, with the boys. But, the modus operandi of the yard is just going to go to the Oaks, and they'll leave it to the Colts. Would that be your view, Tom?
Not necessarily.
No?
No, well, I just think it depends on the Colts, doesn't it? If US Army Ranger blows out this week, and Idaho, I think, is probably their second best one, I think that might run on Saturday or at Chester. If that blows out, they haven't got anything else. Now, they're not going to go, now they'll run lots of horses there, but if they're not just going to give the Derby away, they'd rather win the Derby with Minding than not win it at all. So what I'm saying is that whether she runs or not will a lot depend on how their other colts go in their trials. We saw Air Force Blue blow out. We don't actually know how good the colts are at the moment in comparison to they didn't win any of the trials running up in Ireland that have been run so far, I don't think. I mean, I know Idaho ran well, but he was still beaten by one of Dermot Weld's. So I'd be a little bit, I wouldn't completely rule it out by any stretch of the imagination. Like Nick, I think she probably won't run in there. But unlike Nick, I'm not certain she's a certain stayer over a mile and a half. She showed so much pace. She could have made the running on Saturday. And For me, I'd train her like Zarkava. I'd run her in the Irish Guineas. I'd run her in these are good races that can be won. I'm an old timer who've watched horses from my era go back to running from the 1,000 Guineas into the Oaks. Shadaid's a good example. Never stayed the trip, never won another race. I think Miney's got the whole world ahead of her. She doesn't have to win the Oaks. She can win the 2,000. She can win the Irish 1,000, the Coronation. She can go to York for the Jubmonte. Then she can go to the Derby. That's the way I'd go with her. But I can understand if they want to win the Oaks with her, no problem at all, because she probably will do it by half the length of the track.
Yeah, very interesting angle on that. Brendan, would you just fill us in quickly on what Paddy Power make her Oaks chances?
Very good. 4-5, 7-1 the Somidar, 8-1 the Ballydoyle, and 14's Bar.
Thanks very much. Let's quickly mention the other two Ballydoyle ones there. I mean, obviously 1, 2, 3 for Aidan OBrien. Just need to say just quickly just how amazing that achievement is. It's barely ever been done before, and it's just so happened it was his 250th Group 1 win at the same time. I mean, the man is absolutely brilliant, isn't he, Nick?
Yeah, he is, and I think the thing for me is that I wasn't surprised that he did it either. I mean, they're 3 very good fillies, and if they're in other yards, the trainers would be delighted to have them. So I'm not absolutely surprised that it happened. Galileo's a super sire. They've got all the best bloodstock, haven't they? They've got a well-oiled machine there, and yeah, it's no surprise to see them do that. Just one quick note on the Oaks. I know we're coming to horses to follow, but I thought a Ballydoyle filly called Evensong ran a really, really interesting race in a Pretty Poddy yesterday. Ryan Moore unusually found all the trouble going. He's normally brilliant on these horses and gets them home, but he found every blind alley in that race that he could. Still finished third. I think it would have been very close behind Swiss Range if it had a free run, and I think it's about 14-16-1 for the Oaks. She's caught my eye if Minding goes another way.
I'd agree with that, Nick. I thought she was impressive. I also thought sort of under the radar in the Guineas, Mark Johnson's filly ran really well. Fireglow. She was 4th. She's bred to stay 2 miles, let alone 1.5 miles. And his horses just aren't in form at the moment. And she ran a blinder to be 4th. She was right on the heels of the other 2 fillies. And, I thought she just sort of went under the radar a bit. If Mark Johnson trains her straight for the Oaks, she's a half sister to a horse called Moon Trip that won over hurdles and everything. I cannot believe she'll be 50-1.
He must be devastated, Braveheart. He thought Lumiere was one of the best 3 fillies he'd ever trained, and she was probably more disappointing than Air Force Blue. She was awful, Tom.
Yeah, that's right, and which is the reason. I mean, she's been working with Fireglow. I understand. I think they went to Haydock, had her work together, and she beat Fireglow that day. Not by very far, but she beat her. But I just think the Braveheart fillies have been running so badly, and so that was what made me sort of sit up and take notice about Fireglow, because a whole raft of them have run badly this season. Fireglow didn't. She ran an absolute stormer. She was only a neck behind Alice Springs. So first run of the season, she's bred to stay further. Look, I'm not suggesting for a minute she'll beat Minding. I don't think anything can beat Minding if she goes for the Oaks, but she's not a 50-1 shot.
One to follow there from Tom. We're just going to take a quick commercial break. Do join us in a second.
Here's Paddy Power's latest horse racing offer. It's money back as a free bet if your horse finishes second to the SP Fav at one meeting every day this month. Paddy Power, you're welcome. Max free bet £25, 18 plus. Please gamble responsibly.
Let's take a look now at some of the rest of the weekend action. First of all, going back to Saturday, the Jockey Club Stakes, in which Exosphere beat St. Ledger winner Simple Verse in really impressive style for Michael Sow and Ryan Moore. Nick, do you see this one following in the classic stout lines, Hardwicke and King George?
Yeah, possibly. I think he's got a bit of work to do yet, and it shouldn't be forgotten that Jack Hobbs was 15-8 on to win this race at the weekend and pulled up in kind of mysterious circumstances in a way. He seemed to be all right after the race, but they must have just felt something not quite right during it. And, of course, that's subtracted from the race. We didn't get to see, you want to see a clean battle, don't you? We didn't get that, and Exosphere won nicely, but, slightly tarnished for me by the fact that, Jack Hobbs, what happened to him?
Absolutely. Well, we're still waiting to find out on that one. Brendan, can you just quickly fill us in, actually? What prices are you offering in the Hardwicke and King George on Exosphere, this stout winner?
No prices on the King
prices.
George, I'm afraid, Tom. We do have prices on the Hardwicke. And the Exosphere has slotted in at 4-1 second fav behind Eagle Top. The Eagle Top's 120 horse. I don't think Exosphere would be too far off 120 after that performance. The 4-1 looks a perfectly fair price to me.
Yeah, I mean, if you sort of base your betting on historical record, I think Stout's won 6 of the last 10 Hardwicke, so he's got an excellent record in the race. Tom, would you be interested next year at that price for the Hardwicke?
Not at that price, not now. On the day, I might be interested in it. I thought he was really good. I get Nick's point about the race being sort of tarnished, but I had a few quid on Big Orange, thinking that I'm not a great Jack Cobbs fan, put it like that. And I thought with Simple Verse having a penalty and first run of the season, that this was a chance for him to sort of sneak a Group 2. Exosphere beat him 9 lengths, and whatever anyone says about that, that is good form. Big Orange has got a lot of solid form. He could have beaten him 29 lengths if he'd wanted. He must be a very good horse. The fact that Michael Stout put him in there was interesting. And the Stout horses have turned the corner this year, haven't they? I mean, Nick and I would have been sitting there watching Stout's horses for the last couple of years, thinking where are they gone? But they're back, and Exosphere was impressive, and I wouldn't want to underestimate him at any stretch of the imagination.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Tom. Well, let's look at the another very impressive winner from the weekend, Andre Fabre's Usherette, who won the Dahlia Stakes. I have to say, this was the horse that really did it for me this week, and I was seriously impressed by it. What did you think, Nick?
Well, I was really impressed. Yeah, absolutely, because I was reading the paper in the lead up to the race, and Tom, I know, fancied Arabian Queen. I know Paul Keeley did as well.
Yeah.
For most of that race, 3/4 of the race, I thought they were absolutely spot on. I thought Arabian Queen got the rail, got to the front, and I thought she was going to go away and win quite nicely. I didn't think anything would get to her at all. The fact that Usherette did and went past her, I think was very impressive. So if you take a line through the second, I think she's quite an underrated horse, Arabian Queen, because of what she did at York, and people saying it was a fluke. It was a fluke, probably, but she is still a very good horse in her own right. And for Usherette to come through and win in that manner, yeah, it did impress me very much.
Tom, would you echo those thoughts?
Yes, I'm exactly with you, Tom. The two Toms are agreeing here. Yeah, I thought, bar minding, she was the star of the show, really. I thought she was absolutely sensational. I thought, as Nick's perfectly put there, Arabian Queen is a very, very good, dangerous horse from the front. I think if you take out the 2 runs over 1.5 miles last year, she did absolutely nothing wrong. People say she fluked the Jun Monty, and of course she's not as good as Golden Horn, but she had the Great Gatsby and Time Test and lots of horses well behind her that day. She was 3rd in the Nassau. She's got better form than Jazzy Top. Why she was such a big price, I'll never know. But she got blown away by Usherette in the last furlong, and looking at them physically, Usherette's like 3 times her size, and she is going to be a really good filly in those fillies races this year. I'll be surprised if anything beats her.
Yeah, and a quick shout out here for Arabian Queen as well. I mean, so gutsy, and like you said, the odds on offer were an insult. Were you deliberately trying to insult her, Brendan?
Well, no. I mean, I suppose the price is perhaps we underrate her, but also the betting public tend to underrate her. So you have to factor this into your calculations. Is the thing likely to be backed? I mean, David Ellsworth obviously thinks she's the second coming, but he's the only one. So that was probably a factor. But yeah, we put her in slightly too big. But she definitely had the run of the race. As well. She was probably a little bit flattered to get so close.
But this is the same every time, Brendan, isn't it? Everyone always says she's flattered. She beat the rest 5 lengths. Now, I get it that Amazing Maria probably wasn't at her best, but we can't keep making excuses for all those horses that finished behind her. I just think she's very good. Where you're right is she's not very, very good. She's not top of the... She'll never be top of the class. She's physically a bit limited compared to a lot of the other fillies around, and I'd be surprised if she ever beat Usherette, put it like that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean... I think the other thing is Usherette won really incredibly easy, actually, and she'll be coming back later this year, maybe the Falmouth. It will be fascinating to see her. I really think this is one who's going to go a long way. But if we've got to move on, and if we look at the Palace House now, a profitable one for Clive Cox. What price are you offering for the King's Stand, Brendan?
16-1.
16-1. What do you reckon, Nick?
Well, there's any number of horses you could have taken from that sprint of the weekend, and who will be going for the King's Stand, I think, and might not be the best of them. I've always had a feeling all spring that Kotai Glory is going to come back and prove to be a superstar over 5 furlongs this season, and I know he was beaten at the weekend, but the ground would have been too soft for him. He's better in midsummer when it's absolutely rattling fast. And having done the Charlie Hills column for a few weeks now in the Racing Post Weekender, you can't disguise his enthusiasm. He thinks he's got the horse right back to its 2-year-old days and expects almost to win a big one with it this season. So if there's one for me to go to war with in the King's Stand, I'm going to be following Cotai Glory all season. He just needs that ground quick.
How about you, Tom? What sprinters are you interested in? It should just be noted, actually, that absolutely devastating news. We're going to miss out on the world's top sprinter. Nick, do you want to try and pronounce it? Nick's shaking his head. Tom, do you want to give it a try? There's a lot of U's in it.
Australian filly, we'll call her, shall we?
Yeah, the Australian filly. Okay. Tom, tell me who you're looking out for in the King's Stand and other big sprints this year.
I'm not, Tom, to be honest.
Okay.
I used to love sprints. I used to think they were the best betting mediums going. I think they're absolutely ridiculously impossible for the last 3 years, and I haven't even thought about it. And I won't be, because, look, you can these races time and time again, you run them again next day and something else wins. Unless you get a superstar, unless you get a Deja or an Oasis Dream or one of those, I think it's just anyone can win. It's just where you're drawn, where the pace is, what the ground is. If you get a clear run, I mean, there's nothing. You can throw a hat over about 25 of them, in my opinion. I don't think there's any standout horses these days, and it's whoever turns up. So I will not be looking at them. I will not be thinking about them until the day, and I'll probably still avoid them then.
Discretion is a better part of valour sometimes. Listen, just before we move on from Newmarket entirely, any other eye catchers from the Guineas meeting, or indeed from the flat in general last week, Nick?
Well, I mentioned Evensong earlier. That would be the one for me in the Oaks. I thought the Sagaro Stakes was quite interesting at Ascot last week. Mizu just got up to win it. Not interesting because I think Mizu can go on and win the Gold Cup, but more the other way that I think Order of St George, if he comes over for the race, and I think he would be the Ballydoyle chosen one. He could go a very short price indeed, and he could be a bit better than the British Stairs, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I thought it was quite an interesting race. The only thing about Order of St George is that he avoided Doncaster last year, did he? Because the ground was too soft or something, or the ground was too quick. I don't know. One of the reasons they think he's a little bit ground dependent. I personally don't, but I agree with you that he might be a starter. But I was quite interested in Marcus Tregoning's horse in that race, Nick. I don't know if you saw it, Burmese. I think he's only rated 96, and he might have blown that there, but I think he's a horse with plenty more improvement in him. He's only had 5 or 6 runs, and I think he should have been very close to winning that. I think he got stopped a couple of times, and in those staying races, you can't, they don't quicken, do they? They just sort of stay on, and if you get stopped, your chance is gone. Wouldn't rule him out of running a big race in a big cup race at some stage this season.
We're going to go for another quick commercial break. Back in a minute.
Here's Paddy Power's latest horse racing offer. It's money back as a free bet if your horse finishes second to the SP Fav at one meeting every day this month. Paddy Power, you're welcome. Max free bet £25, 18 plus. Please gamble responsibly.
Hello again, you're listening to the Racing Post Weekend Review Postcast. I'm Tom Kerr and I'm joined by Nick Watts, Tom Segal and Brendan Duke. But enough reviewing, let's look ahead with Chester May Festival set to get underway this week in what looks like it's going to be nice, warm spring conditions for once. Let's look ahead to the feature race on day one. It's the Chester Cup. Brendan, can you furnish us some prices, or you got another spinning wheel of doom?
No. The only slight issue is they're not in betting order, but I'll adapt and overcome. 100 to 30. Excuse me, Steve Rogers. 8 to 1 brings in the Gang Warfare, the Quick Jack, then 9 to 1 Silver Concord, 10 to 1 Heartbreak City, 14 to 1 Duke of Clarence, and No Heretic. And I can't do any more. That's it. 16 bars.
That was excellent, Brendan.
Very good, Brendan. Well done. We're very impressed.
Tom, are you on the Steve Rogers bandwagon?
Well, look, when your two main rivals, in my opinion, Quick Jack and Moonrise Landing, get drawn in 19 and 16, and you get stall 3, I think your chances have gone up quite a lot. I would never back a horse in the Chester Cup at 3 to 1, but I get why Steve Rogers is very well fancied. He's a very progressive horse. He was good on the all-weather. He's got form at Chester with some big giving there. He won't mind what the ground. He's got form on good, soft, whatever ground. Roger Varian's, horses are going well. What's not to like apart from the price?
Nick?
I quite like Silver Concord here.
Oh, Nick, we were on him at Cheltenham. What happened?
Yeah.
It was embarrassing.
But I don't know. I just think Dermot Well's barking up the wrong tree here. I don't think he'll ever make a hurdler out of Silver Concord because he just detests winter ground. And you know, in Ireland in the midwinter, you know, he's just going to be faced with soft, heavy ground all the time. He's a flatbred horse related to Ridgewood, Pearl and the like. So I think Dermot should forget the winter with this horse and just concentrate on the flat and in the summer when he gets his ground. I think it would be good enough for him to show his best at Chester. He's drawn 9, which isn't too bad. I think he can overcome that. And I think he's got potential as a flat horse. So, yeah, forget the jumping. And, you know, I think Silver Concord is interesting.
Definitely has. I mean, I spoke to Dermot about him. I did a Cheltenham preview with him, and he was quite sweet on him running into Cheltenham. He said as long as the ground was good, he thought he was as good as some of the horses that have gone there and run well, and that he's got a very high opinion of him back on the flat. So you might be right. He's dangerously handicapped, but he was so bad at Cheltenham.
Any thoughts on the rest of Chester, Tom? Obviously, we're going to see some O'Brien horses as usual. Anything you're particularly looking forward to?
Yeah, of course. I'm looking forward to seeing the US Army Ranger quite a lot because everyone tells me that he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, you can't tell from his one run at the Curragh, the horse he beat in second, which was well fancied, been well beaten since. But, you know, that's the key horse for me because that will determine what the plan is for the Ballydoyle horses come the Derby. At the moment, it's him or nothing, it looks like. Maybe the Idaho. I've started doing what you're doing. I'm calling them all the something. Whether the Idaho, Brendan. Maybe the Idaho will come in.
Feels good, doesn't it?
It does. I'm quite enjoying it. I'm quite enjoying it. We'll come into the reckoning on Saturday or Sunday at Leopardstown if he doesn't run in the D Stakes. But I think that's the key horse for the whole meeting is US Army Ranger, because if he does what they think he's capable of, then we'll know where everyone stands regarding the Derby, and we'll know, and it will change the whole perception of the race, because Galileo Gold will probably go if he blows out. He might not go if US Army Ranger is really impressive. Minding will definitely not go if US Army Ranger. So we'll know a lot more. So I think he's the key. And one other horse, got to mention in the Chester Oaks, the O'Brien horse, Somehow, or should I call her the Somehow? I know that for a fact she's by Alexandrova. She's by Fastnet Rock out of Alexandrova, who won the Oaks herself. I know Aidan's thinking that she could easily make up into an Oaks-type filly. The Channel 4 cameras were down there the other day, and as we all saw, and I think he mentioned her on the morning line as being a horse that could go for the Oaks. She's running in the Cheshire Oaks. That'll be interesting to see her. So for me, the moment the handicaps are difficult to unravel, but I'd be interested in the O'Brien horses in the classic trials.
How about you, Nick? Anything that's keep taking your eye at Chester this week?
Well, there's loads, but Idaho is a horse that we've mentioned before on the previews, but I just think he's been unfortunately he's been running on the wrong ground, or he hasn't had the ground to suit him. I think wherever he goes, if he goes this week at Chester or if he goes elsewhere for a trial, I think on much better ground, I think you'll see a different horse, and he hasn't done badly already. I mean, he was second in that trial at Leopardstown, wasn't he, behind Harzand? Compromised, I think, by the going. I'd be interested to see what he can do when he gets a bit of fast ground. So hopefully it'll be good enough for him this week to strut his stuff. But yeah, he would be the one. I haven't really looked at handicaps apart from the Chester Cup. So Silver Concord for me and Idaho if he goes.
Lovely. Brendan, you got anything you're looking out for this week?
Yes, well, I'm hopeful that the Idaho will show up at Leopardstown on Sunday, because I'm going to, and he's a far more impressive physical specimen than I am, but I think he has the ability to match, and I think he'll go and win the Derrinstown. Probably still be Aidan's second string, but he's a big runner in the Derby, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, slightly off script here, but it's the Kentucky Derby next weekend as well. Anyone got an interest in that? Has anyone been following that?
I have been following it, and I can't remember the name of the horse I liked. It was one of Cash Asmussen's brother. I've been looking at that for the last couple of days, because I know I'll have to look at that for Saturday, and it won the Santa Anita Derby, but I'm so useless, I've forgotten the name of it. I will find it in a second for you. Come back to me.
Excellent. Nick, I saw you shaking your head there. You're just not interested in international racing?
No, I've not got enough trouble trying to keep up with what's happening in Britain and Ireland, so I'll read what Tom says about it. I'll read what Ron Wood says about it. They know much more about it than I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick Godfrey will be disappointed you didn't say his name.
Yeah, you're in trouble now.
Of course,
you're in trouble now, Watsy.
Nick Godfrey, of course, as well. We can cut that bit out.
You got that name first, Tom?
Yes, Gunrunner.
Gunrunner. Excellent.
Topically in America.
Gunrunner, very much so, yeah. Well, Jesus, we probably better wrap things up before we venture down too far down the
Politicals.
Absolutely dangerous game. That. Listen, guys, thanks a million for joining us today. It's been really, really good fun talking about a great weekend of racing, and also hopefully a few winners in there for the future as well. I've been Tom Kerr. I've been joined by Nick Watts, Tom Segal, and Brendan Duke. And please do join us again from Thursday this week when the Racing Post weekend tipping show will try and follow up Paul Keeley's masterstroke last weekend. Thanks again.
The Racing Postcast in association with Paddy Power. They pay more extra places than any other bookie.